We just started getting into playing punk rock, if you will, just because we just identified with it and we liked it. It wasn't about having a mohawk, or it wasn't about having spiked belts or whatever. It's just about being an individual and just being yourself. And so we just stuck by that. I mean, there was no proof that you could become famous off of doing it or being huge. We just kept doing what we did, because we enjoyed it and we liked what it represented, and we wanted to be a part of that.
In the gritty garages and backyard punk parties of California's East Bay, two misfits dreamed of a rebellion through their music. Two teenagers rallied against the norms of suburbia. With a passion for music and an ambition to be performers, these two high school kids committed to a journey of uncertainty. No one who knew them at that age could have predicted what was to come, except for a few adults who continued to nurture them with hope and encouragement.
We started our band. We never thought in a million years that we would end up where we are right now, because it was anyone before us, it never happened. So,
I interviewed Billy a few years ago for a magazine article. He told me, well, partly about his father being a musician and his mother working really, really hard after his father died just to survive, and it's just something that really drove him to do something with his life, and yet at the same time he didn't have a whole lot of other skills besides music. I mean, he told me many times, I don't know what else I would do or could do.
They were part of a punk rock community that is really very different from any other, and that it's the Northern Californian punk rock community. It was sometimes called NoCal punk rock community, as opposed to the SoCal, which is the Southern Californian. The Southern Californian scene, which really was the early 80s, was really clubs, over 21 clubs. There were all ages show, but it was kind of a very violent, nihilistic kind of scene. Very exciting, but it kind of burnt out inevitably. Conversely, the Northern Californian scene was kind of an ideology that although the punks might not care to hear,
but a lot of bands, when they get to your level, kind of lose that. They kind of lose that energy of all playing together. It's great that you can still have it. You know what I mean?
I think, again, it's about being in the room with us. We have a certain thing when we get in a room together, and even if we're just playing quietly and structuring a song or working on it, I can hear what Trey's doing with his kick drum. I can hear what's going on with the snare, and I can hear Billy emoting a vocal, or if we're just playing a riff, not even thinking about structuring a song or anything, we're just playing a riff. There's a certain feel to it. If you play it enough in a room together, you're gonna know what to do if you're doing it right,
And even paying attention to the lyrics too, helps, me and Mike.
Sit around and watch until
They were the sweet children of the neighborhood.
Youth of Today, Justice League, Clown Alley, Neurosis, and RKL. So it's a really big shoe, like I was saying that there was going to be some somewhere along here. And Saturday night at the Chatterbox on Valencia, it's the Hoss, the Great Boss Hoss.
Two 15-year-olds trying to settle in the new age of suburban music culture from the alleys of Gilman Street in Berkeley. This is the first chapter of their evolution as an iconic rock act of the 21st century. The origin of Green Day. The extraordinary story of these rebels originates in the little town of Rodeo, Northern California. Only 21 kilometers away from the bustling metropolis of San Francisco, this suburban town has an eerie feeling of desolation. This is where Billie Joe Armstrong, the youngest one in his family, had spent his childhood and adolescence. In the distance, about 3 kilometers from the playgrounds, a little farther past the Carquinez Bridge, we find the towering stacks of refineries. Here in the cafeteria of Carquinez Middle School, Billie Joe had met another lost soul of suburbia, Michael Ryan Pritchard. Both of these children were coping with grief in their own ways. Billy had lost his father on September 1st, 1982. He was only 10 years old then. Mike, on the other hand, was given up by his birth mother and was raised by his foster parents, Cheryl Nasser and Patrick Pritchard. However, they were separated due to tension and frequent arguments. The two sad kids had bonded immediately over music and started their own local band with friends Sean Hugh, Raj Punjabi and Jason Relva. They all had eventually found their way to this high school near Pinole. Here, they first had glimpses of the emerging punk attitude and its soundtrack. Sweet Children had adopted not the mohawks or the attire, but the power chords and a fast-paced rhythm. They were the new generation of punk rock with a hint of pop. It was during this time that they came across the emerging scene at 924 Gilman Street.
Some of the most interesting stories in disruption and in cultural movements are when there's a convergence of different elements. Sometimes just the timing works out, where things come together, right people, right idea, right time. And this is one of those stories. Today we're in Berkeley, California, at the famous 924 Gilman Street. This really was the epicenter of the Bay Area punk rock movement in the 1980s and beyond.
There'd be a place called Gilman Street, known as the Gilman Street Project, which was a no alcohol, all ages room on Gilman Street in Berkeley that was founded by a guy called Tim Yohannahan, and he used to edit a punk magazine called Maximum Rock and Roll. So there was this great community.
On New Year's Day 1987, 924 Gilman Street opened for the first time as a safe haven for the new wave of underground punk. This ambitious project was a drug and alcohol-free club that inspired DIY garage bands and hated the major labels and everything mainstream. It was here that Billy Joe and Mike first encountered ideas and anarchy. A local punk act called Isocracy had something to do with their tickets to go live on stage at 924 Gilman. They had finally found an experienced drummer to complete the lineup, John Kiffmeyer or Al Sobrante.
High school at the time. He asked me how to get gigs and how this whole punk thing happened. And his name was John Kiffmeyer, but he also went by the name of Al Sobrante, which was taken from the name of his suburb, which is El Sobrante, means the leftover in Spanish. Anyway, this guy had been, I'd been hanging out with him for a couple of years by now, and his band Isocracy had broken up, and he phoned me and said, "Hey, I got a new band, and we're called Sweet Children. There's these two 16-year-old kids that are playing in it with me, and they're really great. And is there any place we could play?" And at the time, I said, "Well, there's not much going on, but Trey, who at the time was still our drummer in the Lookouts, is organizing some stupid party for a bunch of his high school mates on Friday night, and you're welcome to come play that, but there's no money. It's a 140-mile drive, and it's winter is setting in. I don't know if anybody."
The addition of Al made the band take themselves more seriously. Mike picked up the bass as Sean decided to forego the uncertain path. He used to practice his bass guitar a lot whenever he had a few minutes between classes and part-time jobs. His sessions and sounds had earned him a new nickname, Dirt.
I mentioned it to my partner in the record label at the time, and he was kind of dubious because, and with good reason, because they were a bit poppier. Like, I made that comparison to the Beatles. That was the band they reminded me most of, and our scene and the kind of records we've done so far were definitely more towards the punk end of things. I had a feeling that a lot of the punks wouldn't probably like them that much, and that it wouldn't sell that much. At that time, Green Day were still even having trouble getting gigs at Gilman Street, because some of the more hardcore punks there would say, "Oh no, they're too pop, they're not really punk." But still, I thought it was worthwhile. My partner said, "Well, we'll do it if you want." And about 2 weeks ahead of a release date, we already had the records ready to be pressed. But the band came to me and said, "Oh, we've changed our name. We don't want to be Sweet Children anymore." And I just blew a gasket and said, "You can't do that. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're not that well known as it is, but the handful of people that are going to buy your record, are looking for a record by Sweet Children. What are you going to call yourself now?" And they said, "We're going to be Green Day." And I said, "That doesn't even make any sense. That's a stupid name." He says, "Well, it makes sense to us." And that was the first of, I didn't have a lot of arguments with him over the years I worked with him, but it was probably because I learned from that one that it was pointless. Once they
Gradually, they had secured a deal with Lookout Records and produced 2 full-length albums and a few extended plays as Green Day. A new name to go with the new lineup. During this time, Al moved on and focused on his college education, while Green Day welcomed a new drummer from the Lookouts, Frank Edwin Wright III, or better known as Trey Cool.
We just went. We've played everywhere you can possibly imagine, from existentialist churches to banks, to bathrooms, to rooftops, to the middle of the street, to people's kitchens, to, I mean, lots of places. And you do what
The band now sounded complete. And with a few albums under their belt, they had embarked on tours and gigs, going viral and spreading their name far and wide. They had made new friends, fallen in love, discovered new dimensions, and finally drawn the attention of major labels. When Rob Cavallo, a Warner Brothers executive producer, met the band for the very first time at the Ashby Street house in the summer of 1993, he was already looking for a significant breakthrough. They had welcomed him to a jamming session there and bonded over their favorite music. Green Day loved the fact that the major label guy knew how to handle his guitars.
As soon as I changed that mindset, immediately had success. The first thing that happened was I worked with a band called the Muffs, and I made a 4-song demo. The president of Warner Brothers Records at the time gave me like $2,000, and I brought him the 4 songs after we were done, and he said, "Right, sign them. That's it. Those are the first 4 songs on the record you're going to make." And the next thing you know, I was a real record producer for a major. And then, because of that record, and it was something that was real to me, there was another band that heard about this record and liked it, and they basically asked me to sign them and asked me to produce them, and that was Green Day, and we made Dookie, and that was my second record I ever produced. And we sold 15 million copies.
I am one of those melodramatic molecules. You're added to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my patience on me. I'll keep setting up.
The band had recorded Dookie at Fantasy Studios in Berkeley over 3 weeks. It had songs that resonated with the suburban teenagers and their adolescent challenges. The album contained themes of anxiety, stress, panic attacks, and sexual frustration. It had earned them mainstream success, and the name Green Day topped the charts worldwide. The trio became the new punk icons among youth, with songs that resonated with their individual
Welcome to
lives.
Paradise. You can actually compare those two mixes, and what Rob Cavallo does to it is what it's all about in taking a band up to
record
that
that we
level.
could look back on 20 years from then and go, we're really proud of this record. These are great songs. And it was recorded, hopefully recorded to capture us in a way that would still be listenable a long time from then and not be dated. So that was a conscious effort from us.
It was like you knew that you didn't want to make a record that sounded
Absolutely,
like 1993,
yeah.
1994. Oh, wow.
We actually talked about it a lot.
I mean, because we knew sonically certain records had, you listen to them, you go, yeah, that was recorded in the 70s. Yeah, that was recorded in the 60s. We just wanted to capture maximum Green Day at the time, whatever that was, in the studio we were in. And we took our time and recorded other things, which with the 30-year anniversary, we dropped some demos from then and stuff. But because we wanted to learn this new way of recording on nicer equipment, if you will. And then, but really didn't understand how much it meant to people, because we didn't really look back for a long time.
Who knew that the adolescent Sweet Children would become such a big icon within 7 years of garage practice sessions? Well, it was only just the beginning.